Good morning, everybody. This is Stephen Pugh of the Home Bible College. I want to do another small lecture for the fourth year students of the Home Bible College. This is lecture number 38. None of these lectures are very long, but they do have a particular point each time. And this particular lecture is about the Christian minister and administration. Now, administration, what is it, you may say? Well, administration is the ministry that comes alongside the main ministry of a minister and adds to his ministry. So there's lots of things. I mean, if you said that my main ministry as a minister is to preach and to pray and to preach, that's great. But there's lots of other things alongside that need to be done. There are letters to be written. There's communication to be made. There is things to organize. And all these are not the main ministry, but they are nevertheless, they're alongside the main ministry. And that's why we call them administration. And there are certain things about the minister that needs to be administerially efficient. Okay, administerially efficient. Of course, it's very possible for a minister to become bogged down in administration. We all know what that means, and it's very important that we don't allow that to happen. However, it's also possible to be a really bad administrator, and that's not going to be a good thing. Let me give you just a few things off the top of my head about administration that really need to be good in relation to the minister. First of all, the minister needs to be punctual. Okay? In fact, a lot of ministers are known for being not punctual. They're known for always being late. They're known for always keeping people waiting. They're known for never doing anything on time. And in fact, if something is done at all, it's a bonus. And now, we all would have a smile about this, but actually this isn't really very funny for the people who are on the receiving end of bad administration. Now, we're not suggesting that the minister stands there with a clock in his hand and that he becomes a slave to the clock. We don't expect that. But we do expect, and everybody expects, as a matter of courtesy, that a minister will never be late unnecessarily. Of course, something can always happen to make somebody late, but the main thing is that he has a diary, and he keeps a diary, and he tries to keep to the diary. And there are certain important things in his life that are so important that he cannot afford to let himself down and let other people down just by the negligence of being late. Okay, so that's a very important thing. It's something that is a flaw in some people's character. Of course, the ministers are not the only people like this. Of course, Christians can be like this too, and some church members can be like this too. We have some church members who are always late for services. Now, we don't necessarily know why. It could be that there's a major problem that's causing them to be late. So we're not against anybody that's late. We're just advising that people should be trying to be punctual. The second characteristic I might think about is consistency. When we read through the Gospels and we read through the epistles or through the Old Testament times, we discover that people had customs. It says about the Lord Jesus that he went to the synagogue as was his custom. It says of the apostles that they went to the synagogue because it was their custom to go to the synagogue. There were certain features of ordinary daily life that were consistent. They were not out of character. We find that the apostles had a fairly regulated life. We think of Daniel, who was being tempted to forsake the Lord by allowing himself to eat food which had probably been offered to idols. And so he said, I'd like you to help me to be able to overcome this difficulty because I have a custom. I'm not accustomed to eating meat like this. And so what he did, he wasn't stepping out of character. He was requesting to remain in character. He was requesting to keep to the consistent godly life and the consistent manner of living that God had brought him to in his short life. Now, there's other things very closely related to that. We have things like the characteristic of habitualness. And the Christian minister has to have habits. There has to be certain things in his life that are not only consistent, but habitually good. He needs to be the sort of person that is predictable, that's never really rash in a bad way. He is a person who can be spontaneous, yes, but he nevertheless has certain fixed habits. He has fixed habits of prayer. He has fixed habits of study. He has a fixed method of study. He has a fixed method of evangelizing. And so these are habitual things. These are characteristics that are administratively efficient. I get the word out eventually. The next thing is that he needs to be trustworthy. He needs to be trustworthy. It's a very bad characteristic in a minister if when you ask him to do something, he never does it. As somebody said recently, he says, I don't need to be reminded every 6 months of something that I need to do. You know, the Christian minister needs to be characterized as being somebody that is trustworthy. If he says that he will do something, then he needs to be able to do it. He cannot become characteristic. He cannot become known as a person that's untrustworthy. He must be faithful. People know him to be trustworthy. When something's said about the minister, people say, no, he's not like that, you know. This man is faithful. And you can be faithful in all sorts of ways in life, but this is a man that is faithful. There's a few other things I want to also mention, which I think are important. The Christian minister is administerially efficient in communication. Now, this is a flaw for some people. He uses email. He understands what email is. He knows it. He knows that it isn't something to become a master to him. He knows it's something that if he's not careful, he can become a slave to it. But he still nevertheless does use email. He also answers the phone. Okay, when he has a call, he will answer the phone. Of course, he's not going to become a slave to the phone, but when people contact a minister, it's usually not to upset him or to divert him from his course. They're ringing because they know there's something important to say to him. So answering the phone is something that's important. Of course, he needs to give people the impression that calls that come to him need to be important. You wouldn't just ring your doctor up to have a chat when they're in the middle of surgery. No, of course not, because that would interfere. But nevertheless, you wouldn't want to never be able to ring your doctor. You see the point? And the same is true for the Christian minister. So he uses email, he answers the phone, he uses all of this technology. He also is up to date. Okay, he's up to date. He understands about computers. He understands about the cell phone. He understands about the ways in which people today communicate, especially in terms of community. So he understands the various social network facilities that are available to us all for free. He knows that people can contact him through that means, through any of these means, and he keeps a certain amount of efficiency in the way in which people are able to communicate with him. So there you are. There's a whole lot of things to think about. If I might express my first thought, coming back to the original thinking, the Christian minister, right? The Christian minister is administerially efficient. He uses all of these means, and he is efficient in doing it. He's smooth in doing it. He keeps a diary. He's on time. He's consistent. He has habits that are good. He is trustworthy. He is faithful. And he uses all of the means available to him to further the work that God has called him to. So there we are. There's some thoughts on the Christian Minister, and we look forward to seeing you and catching up with you on the next video. God bless you.